David had always believed that marriage was supposed to get easier with time. 8 years in, he was starting to realize that maybe he'd been wrong about that. It wasn't that things were bad between him and Lisa. They didn't fight. They didn't argue about money or in-laws or any of the usual stuff people complain about, but somewhere along the way they'd stopped really seeing each other. He couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened. Maybe it was gradual, like water wearing down stone. One day you wake up and realize you've become roommates who share a bed. The passion that used to make his heart race when she walked into a room had faded into something comfortable and predictable. Too comfortable, too predictable. Their evenings had fallen into a routine that felt like a script they were both tired of reading. Lisa would come home from work. They'd exchange the usual "how was your day" pleasantries while making dinner together. The conversations were surface level. Work stress, bills that needed paying, plans for the weekend that usually involved household chores. After dinner, she'd usually head upstairs to take a bath and read, while he'd settle into the living room with his laptop. Sometimes they'd watch a show together, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, but even then, they were both usually scrolling through their phones, only half paying attention to what was on the screen. The physical distance between them had grown too. It had been weeks since they'd been intimate. Maybe longer. David had stopped counting because keeping track just made him feel worse about it. They'd kiss goodbye in the mornings, a quick peck that meant nothing. At night, they'd climb into bed at different times, exchange a quiet goodnight, and turn to their separate sides. He knew Lisa felt it too. He could see it in the way she looked at him sometimes, like she was searching for something that used to be there, but neither of them knew how to bridge the gap that had formed between them. It felt too big, too awkward to address, so they just kept going through the motions, pretending everything was fine. That particular Tuesday evening in late October started like any other. The air had that crisp autumn chill that made you want to stay indoors. They'd made pasta for dinner, talked about Lisa's annoying co-worker and David's upcoming project deadline. Nothing special, nothing memorable. After they cleaned up the kitchen together, Lisa excused herself and went upstairs. David heard the bathroom door close, heard the water start running for her bath. He grabbed his laptop and settled into his usual spot on the couch in the living room. He had some emails to catch up on, a few articles he'd bookmarked to read. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old floors. David found himself staring at his laptop screen without really reading what was on it. His mind kept wandering to the state of his marriage. When had they become this? When had the excitement turned into obligation? When had love started feeling like work? He thought about the early days when they couldn't keep their hands off each other, when they'd stay up all night talking about everything and nothing, when Lisa would laugh at his jokes and look at him like he was the only person in the world. Where had that couple gone? The water upstairs had stopped running. He could hear the faint sound of Lisa moving around in the bedroom. He expected her to call down asking if he wanted to watch something, or maybe she'd just go to bed early with her book like she'd been doing lately. He went back to pretending to read his email, already feeling the loneliness of another evening spent in separate rooms. Then he heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Something about them made him look up from his screen. Lisa appeared in the doorway of the living room, and everything David thought he knew about his marriage, about his wife, about where they were headed, suddenly stopped mattering. She was completely undressed, not a stitch of clothing on her. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she stood there, the way she looked at him. There was no hesitation in her eyes, no embarrassment. Just a quiet determination mixed with something he hadn't seen in so long he'd almost forgotten what it looked like. Desire. Real, genuine desire. David's laptop slipped slightly in his hands. He couldn't move. Couldn't speak. His brain was trying to process what was happening, but it was like all his thoughts had suddenly scattered. Lisa didn't say a word. She just started walking toward him. Each step was measured, confident. Her eyes never left his. There was a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth, but it wasn't playful or teasing. It was knowing. It said everything without words. He watched her cross the room, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest like it hadn't in years. It felt like the distance between the doorway and the couch took forever, and no time at all. The room felt charged with something electric, something he'd thought was gone forever from their relationship. When she reached the couch, she didn't stop. She didn't stand there waiting for him to make the first move or say something. Instead, she carefully pushed his laptop to the side, and with a grace that made his breath catch, she climbed onto the couch onto him, straddling his lap. Her knees pressed into the cushions on either side of him. Her hands found his shoulders for balance. And then she smiled. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real. It reached her eyes in a way he hadn't seen in months, maybe years. David's hands hovered at his sides, unsure. His mind was racing with 1,000 questions. What was happening? What had changed? What was he supposed to do? But his body knew exactly what to do. His hands slowly, tentatively found their way to her waist, his touch light, questioning. She was warm, soft, familiar yet somehow completely new. He could feel her breathing, could see the rise and fall of her chest, could see every detail of her face, her eyes in a way he hadn't really looked at her in so long. When had he stopped really looking at his wife? Lisa leaned forward slightly, bringing her face closer to his. Close enough that he could feel her breath. Close enough to see the vulnerability behind the confidence. This wasn't easy for her, he realized. This was her being brave, taking a risk, making herself completely exposed in every possible way. Hi, she whispered finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, almost shy, which seemed funny given the situation, but it made sense somehow. This was new territory for both of them, even after 8 years of marriage. Hi, he managed to reply, his voice coming out rougher than he expected. His hands tightened slightly on her waist, grounding himself in the reality of the moment. This was real. This was happening. His wife, his beautiful, complicated, distant wife, was right here, choosing him, choosing them, in the most vulnerable way possible. And for the first time in a very long time, David felt truly awake. The silence that followed stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that said more than words could. David's mind was still trying to catch up with what was happening. His hands remained on Lisa's waist, barely moving, as if he was afraid that any sudden motion might break whatever spell had been cast over this moment. Lisa's smile deepened just a bit. She could see the confusion in his eyes, the questions forming behind them. But she didn't rush to explain. Instead, she let the moment breathe. Let him process. Let herself be seen in a way she hadn't allowed in far too long. You're probably wondering what this is about, she said softly, her fingers absently tracing small patterns on his shoulders through his shirt. David let out a breath that was almost a laugh. The thought crossed my mind. She looked down for a moment, gathering her words. When she looked back up at him, there was something raw in her expression. I was sitting in the bath tonight and I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't pretend that we're okay when we're not. Couldn't keep living like we're just going through the motions. He felt those words hit him square in the chest because he'd been thinking the exact same thing just minutes before. Lisa, wait, let me finish, she interrupted gently. I've been miserable, David. Not because of you, not because I don't love you, but because I do love you. And somehow we've let everything that made us good together just slip away. And I'm terrified that if we keep going like this, one day we'll wake up and it'll be too late to get it back. David's throat felt tight. His hands moved from her waist to her back, pulling her slightly closer. I've been feeling the same way. I just didn't know how to say it. Didn't know how to bridge the gap between us. I know, she said, and there was such understanding in those two words. That's why I decided to do something dramatic. Something that would make it impossible for us to keep pretending everything's fine. Something that would force us both to be present, to be vulnerable, to actually see each other again. Mission accomplished, David said, and this time he did manage a small smile. You definitely have my attention. Lisa's hands moved from his shoulders to cup his face. Her thumbs brushed gently along his jawline. I miss you, I miss us. I miss the way you used to look at me. The way we used to talk for hours about nothing. The way we couldn't wait to get home to each other. I miss that too, he admitted. Every single day. But I didn't know if you felt the same way. You seemed so distant, so wrapped up in your own world. I thought maybe you were just done with us, with me. Never, she said firmly. I could never be done with you. But I got scared. Scared that maybe we'd become one of those couples who stays together out of habit instead of love. Scared that we'd forgotten how to actually connect. David felt tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. He wasn't usually an emotional guy. But something about this moment, about Lisa's honesty, about the weight of all the things they'd left unsaid for so long, was breaking through every wall he'd built. I'm scared too, he confessed. Scared that I failed you somehow. That I became boring or took you for granted. That I let work and routine and just life get in the way of what really matters. Lisa shook her head. We both did. This isn't about blame. It's about recognizing what's happening and deciding to do something about it before it's too late. They sat like that for a while, just looking at each other, really looking, the way they used to when they were first dating and everything felt new and exciting. David noticed things he'd stopped seeing. The way Lisa's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when she smiled. The tiny freckle just below her left ear. The way her hair fell across her shoulders. Tell me something, Lisa said after a moment. Tell me something real. Something you've been thinking or feeling but haven't said. David took a breath. I was sitting here tonight before you came downstairs, wondering when we stopped being in love and started just being married. Wondering if there was a specific moment when things changed or if it was so gradual we didn't even notice. And, she prompted, and I realized that I never stopped being in love with you. I just stopped showing it. Stopped putting in the effort. Let the daily grind take over, and I hate myself for that. Lisa's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I did the same thing. I convinced myself that this was just what marriage becomes after a while. That the butterflies and excitement were for young people, and we were supposed to settle into something comfortable. But comfortable isn't enough. It's not what I want. Not with you. What do you want? David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I want to feel alive with you again, she said. I want conversations that matter. I want to make you laugh. I want you to surprise me. I want us to prioritize each other instead of treating our relationship like the last item on a to-do list. I want that too, he said. All of it. Then we have to make a choice, Lisa said, her tone becoming more serious. Right here, right now. We can acknowledge this moment, have this conversation, and then let ourselves slip back into old patterns. Or we can decide that things are going to be different, that we're going to fight for us even when it's hard, even when it would be easier to just zone out in front of the TV or hide behind our laptops. David's hands moved up her back, holding her closer. I choose different. I choose fighting for us. I choose you. Lisa leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. Their noses touched, their breathing synchronized. I choose you too, she whispered, and then she kissed him. Not a quick peck like their morning goodbyes, not a routine kiss like they'd been exchanging for months. This was real. This was purposeful. This was saying everything that words couldn't quite capture. David kissed her back with everything he had. Every regret about the distance between them. Every hope for what they could rebuild. Every ounce of love that had always been there, just buried under layers of routine and disconnection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Lisa's smile was different. Lighter, more hopeful. So where do we start? David asked. Right here, Lisa said. We start by being honest, by making time for each other, by remembering that love is a verb, not just a feeling. It requires action. David nodded, his mind already racing with ideas. Date nights, real conversations, turning off their phones during dinner, going to bed at the same time. Small things that they'd let slip away. But for now, none of that needed to be figured out immediately. For now, they just needed to be present with each other, to stay in this moment of vulnerability and honesty and reconnection. Lisa settled more comfortably in his lap, her head resting against his shoulder. David wrapped his arms around her fully, holding her like he used to when they first fell in love. Like she was precious, like she mattered more than anything else in the world, because she did. And it had taken this moment of raw courage from her to remind him of that. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, neither one wanting to break the spell of closeness they'd created. The living room felt different now, transformed from a place where they'd been avoiding each other into something sacred, a space where they'd chosen to be vulnerable and honest. Eventually, Lisa shifted slightly, lifting her head from David's shoulder to look at him again. We need to talk about what went wrong. Really talk about it. Not just acknowledge that there's distance between us, but figure out why it happened. David nodded, even though part of him wanted to avoid the difficult conversation. But that was exactly the problem, wasn't it? They'd been avoiding difficult conversations for too long. You're right. Where do we even start? When did you start feeling lonely in our marriage? Lisa asked directly. The question hit him hard, but he appreciated her straightforwardness. He thought about it carefully, trying to pinpoint a moment or a period. I think it was around the time you got promoted at work. About a year and a half ago. You were so focused on proving yourself in the new role, working late nights, bringing work home on weekends. And I was proud of you, I really was. But somewhere in there, I started feeling like I was last on your list of priorities. Lisa's expression showed pain, but also understanding. You were, and I'm sorry for that. I got so caught up in trying to prove I deserved that promotion that I neglected everything else, including you, especially you. Why didn't you talk to me about the stress you were under? David asked. I could have supported you, helped somehow. Pride mostly, Lisa admitted. I wanted you to see me as capable and strong. I didn't want to burden you with my anxieties about work. But in trying to protect you from my stress, I shut you out completely. David squeezed her hand. I want to know when you're struggling. That's what marriage is supposed to be. Being there for each other when things are hard. You're right, she said. Now your turn. When did you start feeling lonely? David took a breath. Honestly, around the same time, but probably for different reasons. I felt like you didn't need me anymore. Like you had everything figured out and I was just there, taking up space. I started doubting whether I was enough for you. Lisa's eyes widened. David, no. You've always been enough. More than enough. But you never showed it, he said gently. You stopped asking about my day with any real interest. Stopped laughing at my jokes. Stopped initiating any kind of physical contact. I felt like I was trying to connect with someone who'd already checked out. The words hurt to say and clearly hurt for Lisa to hear, but they needed to be said. They danced around these feelings for too long. I didn't realize I'd pulled away that much, Lisa said quietly. I guess I was so focused on work that I put everything else on autopilot, including us. Especially us. I assumed you'd always be there, that our relationship was solid enough that it didn't need constant attention. Nothing grows without attention, David said. Not gardens, not careers, not relationships. We stopped tending to us. Lisa nodded, wiping at a tear that had escaped down her cheek. You're right. And the scary part is how easy it was to let it happen. How quickly we went from being in love to just coexisting. Do you think we can fix it? David asked, voicing the fear that had been lurking in his mind. Do you think we can get back to what we had? I don't know if we can get back to what we had, Lisa said thoughtfully. But maybe that's not the goal. Maybe we need to build something new, something better, something that takes into account who we are now, not who we were 8 years ago. David considered that. She was right. They weren't the same people who'd gotten married. They'd both grown and changed, dealt with career stress, life disappointments, personal growth. Maybe trying to recreate the past was the wrong approach. So what does that look like? He asked. It looks like having conversations like this one, Lisa said, being honest even when it's uncomfortable. It looks like making each other a priority instead of an afterthought. It looks like putting in effort, not just assuming love will sustain itself. I can do that, David said. I want to do that. Me too, Lisa said. But it also means we have to be willing to be uncomfortable sometimes. To have hard conversations, to call each other out when we're slipping back into old patterns. David nodded. Agreed. No more pretending everything's fine when it's not. They sat in silence for a moment, both processing the weight of what they'd discussed. It felt good to finally have everything out in the open, but it was also exhausting. Vulnerability took energy. Can I tell you something? Lisa asked, her voice softer now. Anything. I've been so scared that you'd leave me, or that you'd cheat, or that you'd wake up one day and realize you could do better. That fear made me pull away even more, like if I didn't get too close it wouldn't hurt as much when you inevitably left. David's heart broke at her words. Lisa, I've never even thought about leaving you, or being with anyone else. Even when things were at their worst between us, you were still the only person I wanted. Really? She asked, searching his eyes for the truth. Really? He confirmed. My fear was different. I was afraid you'd realize I was boring, that I couldn't keep up with your success and ambition, that you'd outgrow me and resent being tied to someone so ordinary. Lisa actually laughed at that, though it was tinged with sadness. You're not ordinary, and I never wanted someone extraordinary. I just wanted you. I wanted the man who makes me coffee exactly how I like it. Who remembers stupid little details about my day? Who used to leave notes in my lunch bag? When did you stop doing that, by the way? David felt sheepish. I don't know. I guess I thought it was silly. that we were past that stage. I loved those notes, Lisa said. I saved every single one of them. They're in a box in my closet. That revelation stunned David. You saved them? Of course I did. They made me feel special, loved, like you were thinking about me even when we were apart. She paused. I miss feeling that way. Then I'll start writing them again, David promised. I'll do all the little things I stopped doing. The things that showed you mattered to me. And I'll do the same, Lisa said. I'll ask about your day and actually listen. I'll laugh at your jokes, even the bad ones. I'll initiate conversations and dates and everything else I've been neglecting. They were making promises to each other, pledges to do better. But David knew from experience that promises were easy in moments of emotional intensity. The real test would be following through when life got busy again, when work stress returned, when the initial motivation faded. We should probably set some actual ground rules, David suggested. Things we commit to doing no matter what. Lisa nodded enthusiastically. Good idea. Like what? Like dinner together every night. No phones at the table. Real conversation. Yes, Lisa agreed. And date night once a week. Alternating who plans it. Going to bed at the same time, David added. Even if one of us isn't tired. Just being together. Checking in with each other every day, Lisa continued. Not just how was work, but really checking in. Asking if there's anything the other person needs. They kept building their list, each suggestion feeding off the last. It felt good to have a concrete plan, not just vague intentions to do better. One more thing, David said. We need to promise to have these hard conversations regularly. Not wait until things get desperate again. Agreed, Lisa said. Monthly check-ins, where we sit down and honestly assess how we're doing. I can do that. Lisa settled back against him and David wrapped his arms around her again. The conversation had been heavy but necessary. And now there was a path forward. A real tangible plan for rebuilding what they'd almost lost. The days following that pivotal evening felt different to David. It was like someone had adjusted the color saturation on his life, making everything brighter, more vivid. He and Lisa were both making a conscious effort to implement the changes they'd talked about, and while it wasn't always easy, it was worth it. The first major change was their morning routine. Instead of rushing around separately, grabbing coffee to go and barely exchanging words, they started waking up 30 minutes earlier. Those 30 minutes were just for them. They'd sit together at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, talking about the day ahead. Sometimes the conversations were deep, sometimes mundane, but the point was they were connecting. David had also revived his old habit of leaving notes for Lisa. The first one was simple. Hope your meeting goes well today. Proud of you. Love D. He'd tucked it into her work bag. When she texted him later that day with 3 heart emojis, he knew she'd found it. That small gesture, which took him less than a minute, had made her feel seen and loved. It was a good reminder that maintaining connection didn't always require grand gestures. Dinner times became sacred. They'd both committed to being home by 6:30. No excuses except genuine emergencies. They'd cook together, catching up on each other's days while chopping vegetables or stirring pots. Then they'd sit down at the table, phones in another room, and just be present with each other. The first few dinners were a bit awkward. They'd gotten so used to silence or surface-level conversation that having to really engage took effort. But as the days went on, it got easier. They'd talk about current events, share funny stories from work, discuss future plans. The conversations flowed more naturally. Their first official date night happened on Friday, exactly 1 week after Lisa had walked into that living room and changed everything. It was David's turn to plan, and he'd put genuine thought into it. Nothing fancy, just dinner at the Italian restaurant where they'd had their third date 9 years ago, followed by a walk through the park they used to frequent when they first started dating. As they sat across from each other at the restaurant, David noticed how different Lisa looked. Not physically different, but there was a lightness in her expression that had been missing for so long. She was smiling more, laughing at his stories, leaning in when she talked. It reminded him of the woman he'd fallen in love with. This was a good choice, Lisa said, gesturing to the restaurant. I can't believe I forgot how much we used to love this place. We forgot a lot of things, David said. But we're remembering now. After dinner, they walked hand in hand through the park. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under their feet. They didn't talk much, just enjoyed being together in a way they hadn't in ages. It was comfortable, but not in the detached way it had been before. This was comfortable in the way that comes from genuine connection. "Can I ask you something?" Lisa said as they sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. "Of course. Are you happy? Like really happy? Or are you just going through the motions because we said we'd make an effort?" David thought about it carefully. "I'm happy. Genuinely. These past few days have reminded me why I fell in love with you in the first place. Why I married you. I feel like I have my wife back and it's amazing." Lisa smiled, but there was something hesitant in it. "That's good. I'm happy too. But I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know? Like we're in this honeymoon phase of our renewed relationship, but eventually we'll slip back into old patterns." "We might," David admitted. "Change is hard, but that's why we have our monthly check-ins, to catch ourselves before we fall too far back. I guess I'm just scared," Lisa confessed. "Scared that the initial motivation will fade and we'll end up right back where we were." David squeezed her hand. "That's a valid fear. But you know what? The fact that we're both aware of the danger means we're more likely to avoid it. We know what happens when we get complacent. We've lived it. Neither of us wants to go back there." Lisa nodded, seeming somewhat reassured. "You're right. We just need to stay vigilant." They sat there for a while longer before heading home. That night, they went to bed at the same time, another one of their new commitments. They lay facing each other in the dark, talking quietly about nothing important, just enjoying the closeness. As David drifted off to sleep, Lisa's head on his chest, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real. Genuine hope for their future together. The following week brought their first test. Lisa had a huge project at work, the kind that demanded long hours and lots of stress. David could see her starting to slip into old patterns, bringing her laptop to the dinner table, checking emails constantly, getting tense and withdrawn. On Wednesday evening, as Lisa sat at the kitchen table frantically typing on her laptop instead of helping make dinner, David made a decision. He walked over, gently closed her laptop, and took her hands. "Hey," he said softly, "I know work is stressful right now, but this is exactly what we talked about. Not letting work consume everything." Lisa looked up at him and he could see the stress in her eyes. "I know, but this project is important. My boss is breathing down my neck and I can't afford to mess it up." "I get that," David said, "but you also can't afford to mess up our marriage again. We made a commitment. Dinner together. No work talk, no devices, just us." For a moment, Lisa looked like she might argue, but then her shoulders sagged and she nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm doing exactly what I said I wouldn't do." "It's okay," David reassured her. "That's why we're watching out for each other. Come on, help me finish making this stir-fry and tell me about what's stressing you out." They cooked together and Lisa talked through her work anxieties. David listened, asked questions, offered support. By the time they sat down to eat, Lisa looked calmer. The project was still there, still stressful, but she'd gotten some perspective. "Thank you," she said over dinner, "for calling me out on that. I needed it." "That's what we do now," David said. "We keep each other accountable." Their first monthly check-in happened on a Sunday afternoon, exactly 4 weeks after Lisa had crossed that living room. They'd blocked off 2 hours, made tea, and sat down to honestly assess how things were going. "Overall, I think we're doing really well," Lisa started. "I feel more connected to you than I have in years. The daily routines we established are working," David agreed. "I feel the same way. But there are still things we need to work on. Like I've noticed you still sometimes zone out when I'm talking. Old habit, I know, but it's something to be aware of." Lisa winced but nodded. "You're right. I catch myself doing it. I'll work on being more present." "And I need to be better about initiating physical affection," David admitted. "I still sometimes wait for you to make the first move instead of reaching for you myself." They went through their list of commitments, discussing what was working and what needed adjustment. It wasn't always easy to hear criticism, even constructive criticism, but they both remained open and honest. By the end of their check-in, they'd made a few adjustments to their routine and reaffirmed their commitment to each other. It felt good to be proactive about their relationship instead of reactive. "You know what I'm most proud of?" Lisa said as they cleaned up their teacups. "What?" "That we're doing this. That we're putting in the work. Most couples would have just kept drifting until it was too late. But we caught it. We're fixing it." David pulled her into a hug. We're fixing it together. That's the important part. 6 months had passed since that October evening when everything changed. David sometimes still found himself amazed at how different their life looked now compared to then. It wasn't that everything was perfect. They still had disagreements, still had stressful days, still occasionally fell into old patterns. But the difference was they were aware of it now. They caught themselves and course-corrected. Their friends had started noticing too. At a dinner party one Saturday night, their friend Rachel pulled Lisa aside in the kitchen. "Okay, what's your secret?" Rachel asked, half joking but also genuinely curious. "Secret to what?" Lisa asked, confused. "To whatever you and David have been doing. You guys are like newlyweds lately, always touching, always talking, actually laughing at each other's jokes. Meanwhile, Tom and I are like ships passing in the night. What changed?" Lisa thought about how to answer that. "We almost lost each other. We let our marriage get to a really bad place, and then we decided to fight for it instead of letting it die." Rachel's expression turned serious. "What do you mean, fight for it?" So Lisa told her. Not every detail, but the broad strokes. How they'd been drifting apart. How she'd made a bold choice to break through the wall between them. How they'd had hard, honest conversations and made concrete commitments to change. "Wow," Rachel said when Lisa finished. That takes a lot of courage, to be that vulnerable." "It was terrifying," Lisa admitted. "But staying in that miserable halfway place was worse. At least this way we had a chance." Rachel looked thoughtful. "Maybe Tom and I need to have a similar conversation." "Maybe you do," Lisa agreed gently. "Don't wait until it's almost too late like we did." That conversation stuck with Lisa. She mentioned it to David later that night as they were getting ready for bed. "Rachel asked me what our secret was," Lisa said. "She and Tom are going through something similar to what we went through." "What did you tell her?" David asked, taking off his watch and setting it on the dresser. "The truth. That we almost lost everything because we stopped trying. That we had to make a conscious choice to prioritize each other." David came over and wrapped his arms around her from behind, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Do you think we should tell more people? Like actually talk about what we went through?" Lisa turned in his arms to face him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe our story could help other couples. We could be open about how bad things got and what we did to fix it. So many people are probably struggling with the same things we struggled with, but they don't know how to address it." Lisa considered that. "You know what? I think you're right. We tend to only share the highlight reel of our relationships, but maybe if we're honest about the hard parts, it could help others feel less alone." Over the following weeks, they did start being more open with their close friends. Not in a preachy way, but just in honest conversations about marriage and relationships. They talked about the danger of complacency, the importance of daily effort, the need for vulnerability and honest communication. Some people were receptive. Some seemed uncomfortable with that level of honesty, but several couples reached out later to say that those conversations had prompted them to take a hard look at their own relationships and make changes. David and Lisa also decided to see a couples counselor, not because things were bad, but because they wanted to maintain what they'd rebuilt. Their counselor, Mrs. Peterson, was impressed by their proactive approach. "Most couples don't come to see me until they're on the brink of divorce," she said in their first session. "The fact that you're here while things are going well shows incredible emotional intelligence and commitment." Through counseling, they learned better communication techniques, strategies for managing conflict, and ways to maintain intimacy.